One of the most asked questions I get is, how do I work teaching from home as a single mom with 3 kids? As many of you guys know, I've been working from home as an online teacher since 2019. This is my primary source of income, and it allows me to be able to work from home and navigate my own schedule. When I started teaching, I had a 3-month-old, a 5-year-old, and a 9-year-old. I am now teaching with a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 10-year-old. I have taught both Beijing working hours and like normal people working hours is what I'm gonna call it. And I've done all of this as a single mother. I've learned a lot of tricks along the way, and I'm going to talk to you about some of them that I've learned and my journey working as a single mother from home as an online teacher. Welcome back to my channel, everyone, or if you're brand new, welcome for the very first time. My name is Jillian Shanahan, and I've dedicated this channel to helping other online teachers not only get hired, but learn how to grow their income and their teaching business, their online teaching businesses. If you haven't already subscribed yet, make sure you do so. Click that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you don't miss anything. One of the perks of this job is the ability to create your own schedule. If you're a single mom, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you know how important that is. I mean, it's cool for everyone, don't get me wrong, but when you have other people who you have to work around their schedule and you have to take care of them and you have like all these other responsibilities, it is so beneficial to be able to make your own schedule and work the days and the times that you want to. That flexibility is determined a lot by which company you work for. If you're working for a Chinese company like VIP Kid and Palefish, which I've worked for both of them before, then your hours are really set. You're basically limited to the peak hours, because I might want to teach a class at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon here, but in China that's 2 o'clock in the morning and kids aren't going to be taking classes then, they're sleeping. Every once in a while you might get the random kid who lives in Germany, but for the most part your hours are going to be Beijing time hours. When I started with VIP Kid, and I wanted to make the most of my time. So I literally opened up everything. I was basically pulling all-nighters, which I do not recommend if you like sleeping. I like sleeping. My sleep schedule was crazy. I had a nursing 3-month-old at the time, so I adjusted her sleep schedule and her feeding schedule to fit into my work schedule. So a 3-month-old is going to wake up in the middle of the night to eat. So what I would do is I would schedule breaks throughout the night, and those would be the breaks depending on how often she needed to eat, depending on how old she was and everything. You know, really, you really have to know your kids and their needs to make this work for you. But I would schedule breaks throughout the night. During those breaks, I would wake her up, I would feed her, I would change her diaper, and I would put her back to bed. And then she had a dry, clean diaper and a belly full of milk, so she would go until the next time I had to wake her up. She wasn't waking up on her own. I really had a set sleep schedule for her. And then as she grew, I would kind of make adjustments to my work schedule to accommodate her needs. And another thing I gotta say about this, it has created a very schedule dependent toddler, which I love. She goes to bed between 7 and 8 o'clock. Her bedtime is usually 7 o'clock right now. And if I don't get her into bed at 7 o'clock, she will like get mad at me. She'll be like, Mom, it's bedtime, I'm tired. You know, she's like ready to go. So doing this since basically she was a newborn, she's learned that this is my sleep schedule and this is what I have to do. And I didn't do that with my other two. With my other two, I did the feed on demand and everything. And I know everybody's got their own practices that they do. I did this out of necessity so that I could work, but I feel that that's what caused, and I'm not any kind of like sleep training expert or anything, but I feel like that's what caused my kid to now actually like follow the schedule that I need her to follow. So during the daytime, the other two would be in school, and I did the whole sleep when your baby sleeps thing because I was up all night. Basically, if I had a break of classes that weren't booked, I might take a nap, but pretty much I was up the entire the entire night. So then I would take a nap when she took a nap. I was really sleep deprived, but I think all new mothers are. And like I was saying, like I was doing this by myself, so I really had to figure it out. I was exhausted, but it gave me the opportunity to make a livable income with a newborn. My booking rate started to grow. I started to get fully booked on the times that I wanted to be booked. So I started to knock down the middle of the night hours, and I was not pulling all-nighters anymore. I don't know, I can't remember how long that took, but it did happen. So I set very strict hours because I am a gung-ho overachiever when it comes to some things, and I have a hard time saying no. So I sat down, I figured out these are the hours that I'm gonna work, and I'm not gonna work anything more. So when head teachers, I'm now only working for Palefish. So now when head teachers are coming to me and they're saying, hey, can you open up these hours? No, I can't. That's outside my working hours. I set a schedule, I stuck to it, and that's what I went off of. So the hours that I initially set were 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. On some days I would take an hour break to drive my daughter to daycare and back. And then Friday and Saturday nights, Eastern Standard Time, because that's where I am, I would work, but I would not work past midnight because, you know, Friday and Saturdays you can do the all-nighters again. So those are peak hours, but my limit was midnight. I would not work past midnight. So now these hours put me at working full-time. I was a full-time teacher, was working 40 hours, sometimes more a week, and I was sometimes taking naps because 4 a.m. is rough, for me at least. I'm not a 4 a.m. person. On school days for my older child, I would take 1 5-minute break to get her up, make sure she was out of bed, get her in the shower, or, you know, get her like washed up, ready to go, teeth brushed and everything. Another 5-minute break to make sure that she was dressed and she was ready to go. And on the next 5-minute break, I would get her out to wait for the school bus. So honestly, I'm not saying it was easy, it was hectic, but I made it work and it got me to where I'm at now. So it was worth it. It was definitely a challenging time, but it was also definitely worth it because there are not many jobs that you can do this with, going into entry level and whatnot. So those are the tips for the Beijing time hours. Then came OutSchool, and suddenly I had way more flexibility because with OutSchool, if you're not familiar with OutSchool is worldwide. So I have taught kids in like basically every country, probably every time zone, definitely, I'd say. So with OutSchool, you can pretty much work whenever you want to. So for a lot of people, this is probably like really cool, but for me, it was really overwhelming because I now had to like sit down. And I remember when I did this, it was such a big deal to me because I had to sit down and I had to really think and figure out what hours work best for me, which hours work best in my life, like which works best, like what's going to work best for my kids as well as what's going to work best for me. So I ended up deciding that I was going to work nap times 1 to 3, and then I would work some night hours as well. When I first started, I kept working for Palefish, and then I slowly started dropping the Palefish hours because I realized I was making more money in OutSchool than I was on Palefish. So my time would be better off spent with OutSchool rather than Palefish. So I eventually quit Palefish altogether and I was only working with OutSchool. I wanted to increase my working hours because I was only working like 4 hours a day. And at this point, my 2-year-old would no longer necessarily sleep through my late morning classes. So like those like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock classes, she was already up. Her wake time was before that. So I didn't want to add hours there, and I didn't want to be waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to teach. I don't ever want to do that again if I can avoid it. So in January of this year, I decided that I was going to put my youngest in daycare. That was a really hard decision to make because it's like, hey, I'm here, I'm capable, like I can do it. But I realized that I wanted to add more onto my plate. If I was going to add more onto my plate, I had to take some off. And by adding hours and increasing my income, I would be able to be a better parent. I'd be able to provide more for my kids, and then the quality time that I have, or the time that I have with my kids outside of daycare, outside of school, would be more quality time as opposed to juggling working and whatnot. I'm really glad that I did this. I even got slack from her doctor, which I was not impressed by, because I told them I had to go in with the paperwork for the daycare for them to sign off on. And my doctor was like, you work from home, why are you gonna do that? Why? Just, it's not good for them. And since I've put her in daycare, I have seen such an enormous amount of growth from her. She's learned so much. She loves it there. She's made friends. It gives me more time to mow my 3 acres of lawn, do my gardening, clean my house. You know, I was doing schoolwork at one point in time. I should probably pick that back up because I'm like 2 classes away from my master's degree. It gives me more time to do the things that I need to do outside of mom. So in a nutshell, I think my biggest takeaway tips would be, 1, really sit down and figure out which hours work for you. If you're limited to one company, then work within that company to see which hours they have available that works for you. If you're not limited to one company, explore other options. If the options that one company has doesn't work for you, explore other options. Let your kids' schedules and your work schedules kind of work around each other. They shouldn't be fighting each other. Let them work together. And 4, invest in daycare if you really need it. If you feel like you need it and you think that you can afford it, invest in daycare or invest in a nanny or some kind of help. You don't have to do it all on your own. And if you can invest in daycare, you can spend more time working too. So it ends up giving you the extra money plus some to pay the daycare. And most importantly, you gotta be willing to change your schedule and work with your schedule. Be flexible, because things are gonna change. As your kids grow, their needs are going to change, their sleep routines are going to change. Things might come up. If something stops working, like if something was working and then it stops working, always be open to the idea of adjusting your whole life around it if you have to. Not all of these tips will work for everyone. And at some point in time, your child's natural development is going to require you to make some change in your work schedule. And that's okay. As parents, it's just kind of part of the job that we have to be willing to accept things are going to change in our lives. And luckily, this kind of job allows that to happen. One more thing. So this whole video I talked about schedules, but there is one more thing that's super, super important, and that is to make sure that you invest in a quality headset. You're gonna want a headset that has a mute button. These headphones should have some sort of like background noise muffling feature on them so that you can't hear anything that's going on, but they should also have a mute button. And this is especially important if you're teaching for Palefish, because Palefish does not have, I don't know why, but there is not a mute option on the Palefish app. So if you have some noise that's going on in the background, whether it's like somebody knocking on the door, your kid waking up early, your daughter coming over, Mom, I'm teaching, right? Like anything like that, you want to be able to mute out. And Palefish does not have any option on their app to do that. So if you're working for a company like that, the mute button is especially important. So what tips do you have that I didn't mention? If I missed something, drop them in the comments below. Who knows? You might save a mom's life. Or at least her sanity. All right, guys, make sure you subscribe and hit like to this video if I helped you with anything. And I will see you guys all in my next video. Bye, guys.